Welcome to Mine Explorers. Today we have a very special guest, Dave Kallas from the Utah lobbyist, right?
Yep.
I guess, is that your title?
Yes, I'm a lobbyist.
You're a lobbyist, a professional lobbyist. So today we're going to talk about what he does for the state, what he is excited about, and how he helps educate the people about all kinds of different topics. So I read on your bio today that you have a very extensive, wide range of knowledge in all kinds of different industries, not just mining. I saw on there that you are educated in land use, private property, tax law, natural resources, transportation, employment law.
Yeah.
That's quite the scope. How did that all came to be?
Well, I've been doing this for a lot of years, and so it's mostly come from experience. But I've been lobbying for, I don't know, 17, 18 years or so. And I focus in Utah. So there's lobbyists, federal lobbyists, state lobbyists, and my work is all done in Utah, and kind of specializing in what we do in Utah and what's the public policy, and so I try to be a generalist where I can work with different industries.
Okay.
The one industry I've spent a lot of time in is the natural resources, resource development and extraction, and kind of related to that is the land use. But I do insurance, a lot of insurance issues, work with our home and auto insurers, or work with some municipalities, or kind of an array of different clients.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. So when you say natural resources, what in that space are you doing?
Well, I can work on anything because when the client comes to you and they need help on a certain issue, they're working with the government on something. It's you don't, as a lobbyist, you don't have to be the expert in a particular industry. Your expertise is more in the process and helping folks navigate the process.
Gotcha.
And so if they're if they are a power company that's looking to do a project, or if they're a mining and extraction company that's looking for some help, my job is to help them get through the process here, and to work with state regulators, state legislators, and others in that arena that they have to try to navigate. And a lot of people ask, well, what is a lobbyist?
Right.
Right? Like, what does that even mean? And they have this kind of idea it's like, oh, there's these evil people that are in the back room smoking a cigar and coming up with evil ideas, right? And that's not what it is. But to me, it's a pretty essential part of our government and our democratic system. And so we all know from, what was it, 5th grade class lessons, how a bill becomes a law, and the process. And you have on the federal level the president and the Congress, the House and the Senate. And then on the state level, in every state it's the same. You have the governor, you have a state assembly or a state legislature, and divided into a House and a Senate. So the role of a lobbyist is, the best way I can explain it is, if let's say you are a nurse and you've had a lot of experience in caring for people and working in the hospital and having patients, you know a lot about healthcare. And then you decide to run for your local office to become a member of the legislature. And then you get up there, you win your election, you're up there, you're a great resource to talk about healthcare. And when a bill is proposed, if this is good or if it's bad, or things that may need to be changed. But that's one issue. And so what do you do the next day or the next hour when the next bill that comes up is about mining, or about insurance, or about tax rates? And there's a lot of things that you are not an expert in. And so that's what a lobbyist really is for, is you have to have a relationship of trust with those legislators, and be able to explain, here's what's this bill is doing to our client, or here's how it impacts this industry, and be able to quickly provide information, and to be a trusted source of information, so they can reach out and say, explain this bill, I don't get it. What is it actually doing?
Right.
And so that's what you are there for, is really to be a source of information and a resource for people who have to vote and make decisions. So that's primarily what a lobbyist is doing.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for that explanation. I wasn't quite sure. So that makes sense. So that now it makes sense why your resume covers all kinds of different industries, because over the years you've had to learn and educate yourself on, so that you can be a good source of information to pass it on to the legislators. It's interesting. Yeah. So out of all of these things that you know, which one do you find the most fascinating? And we don't have to be biased just because you're on a mining show.
I do love the the natural resource arena. I really enjoy, because it's very it's a locally driven area where if you are living in Utah or Texas or California, your state legislature can have a huge impact on that arena. Right. There's a lot of issues related to, let's say, in finance, where it's so governed by federal law. But in Utah, we can really determine the mining industry or the natural resource industry. And we have the opportunity to promote natural resource extraction and conservation, and sort of the stewardship of the land. And so that's a really fun area. You get to go all over the state and kind of see what's happening, and really have a big impact on the local economies.
Oh yeah.
So I think that's probably my favorite area. But there's I enjoy it all. I enjoy my job, which is great.
That is great.
So I'll take on any kind of challenge.
Very good. That's interesting. Yeah. Good. And so you are also part of the Utah Coalition, right? Can you explain a little bit about what that is?
Yeah. So years ago, I was working with a local company that does a lot of construction and aggregates. So they're both on the contractor side and on the resource side, on the supply side. And so they manage a lot of sand and gravel pits and quarries. And we just saw that there was a lot of challenges for the industry. People love a freshly paved road, right?
Yes.
I mean, is there anything better than driving down that new smooth road, right? Yeah. Or the concrete, right? And having that patio poured at your house, or having a foundation. The availability of those products, people love, and everybody wants that. But on the supply side, not everybody wants to live next door to a gravel pit.
Right.
And so as Utah is growing, we were seeing this trend of these long-term operations, gravel operations and quarries, that were getting encroached upon by development. And that was then influencing local decision making and local policies. And so the city council was saying, we don't want a gravel pit in our city. And that became a challenge for the industry. One, for those who had already been there, who were now facing challenges of like, can we upgrade our facilities? We're being forced to change our hours of operation. And then also it became even harder for sort of a greenfield operation, a new operator to come in and get permitted and get zoning and go through that municipal or local government process.
Yeah.
And as a local elected official, it's a lot easier to say, we're not allowing this in our community, than to say, okay, yeah, we're going to allow a new gravel pit to come into our community. And so we saw this trend happening. And we had seen some cities and counties that were essentially eliminating the zoning, the land use that allowed for sand and gravel extraction. And so we banded together. We went out and met with a few other companies and that were in that arena and just said, look, we need to work together on this issue.
Yes.
And this is a local issue, but it's also kind of a state issue.
Mm-hmm.
And so we formed a coalition. And this is kind of inside baseball, but in Utah and in our state laws, we refer to sand and gravel and aggregate as critical infrastructure material.
Okay.
So it's a mouthful.
Yeah.
But that's what it's called. And so we formed the Critical Infrastructure Material Coalition. And so it was just a coalition to say, hey, we want to be out there and be active and be protecting and fighting on behalf of this industry and educating the public and educating city councils and state legislators and letting them know what's going on in the industry, how their decisions will impact the industry, and really also protect the industry from bad decision making. Mm-hmm. So that was sort of the genesis of how we got started.
Yeah, and so are you guys finding that harmony between municipalities and development? I mean, there has to be something where we want to keep our local sand and gravel mines local because, as we know, transportation is the most expensive part of the process, mm-hmm. right? So the further we put those out, the more we're going to pay for those raw materials. So where's the balance there with keeping the mines like far enough away from the city, but close enough where it's not raising prices, but keeping people within the city limits happy?
Well, it's a challenge because like any mining, you have to do it where the resource exists.
Exactly.
And everybody thinks like, oh, you can get sand and gravel anywhere. And those in the industry know that there's, well, wait a minute, not anywhere.
Yeah.
And then also you have to deal with local, like in Utah, we have the UDOT, the mm-hmm. Department of Transportation. We have to be able to meet their specifications and what do they want. They're the largest customer.
Yeah.
And so you can't just go anywhere. And that was that's been a process of educating and saying, look, we live in Utah. There's a lot of natural resources here, mm-hmm. but a lot of the land is owned by federal government.
Yes.
A lot of it has restrictions on it. We can't just go get a permit to mine in a wilderness area or in the forest area. And so we're actually quite limited to mm-hmm. where we can mine, and then where we can, does the resource even exist mm-hmm. that meets all the needs? And so that's been a challenge, is the education of, we can't just go anywhere. And then the other was effort we've put a lot of work into is those that are already there, those operations that have been there, I call them legacy operations, that are now, they were far away. They were out in the boonies, mm-hmm. and now they're like in suburbia and sprawl, urban sprawl is all around them. Yeah, when you look at the population map, it's always fun to see like, oh wow, they're just going right up next to that gravel mine that's been there for 50 years. Here in Utah, we have the, you're familiar with, and maybe some of the listeners are what we call the point of the mountain, for example. Mm-hmm. And that was, years ago was far away from civilization. Right. And that's where they put the prison, and that's where they kind of said, okay, the mines can be out there. Well, now that's like the new cool area where all the development is happening. It's surrounded by all these tech companies. Oh, it's just exploded over the last just 5 years. Yeah, and that's sort of the center of gravity for development in Utah. Mm-hmm. And it's the heart of, the highest producing gravel pits in Utah are there. Yeah. Or some of the big gravel operators are there. And so as our coalition worked, we said, okay, we're going to get involved in trying to protect these legacy guys that have been there for a long time. They have land, they have property rights, and really where better to be than where everything is happening, because that keeps costs down. Mm-hmm. And for the aggregate industry, it's different than, let's say, if you're mining for gold or you're mining for beryllium or something. That resource is a lot more location specific.
Oh, yes.
You don't mine gold where there's not gold, right?
Yeah.
You go find the beryllium where there's the beryllium. But the sand and gravel, you do have more choices, but you need to be close to where it's consumed.
Right.
You don't sell your product by the ounce, you sell it by the truckload. And so transportation is the biggest factor, or among the biggest factors in the cost. And so I often refer to this industry as we're sort of like the urban miners, where we need to be in the urban areas where we can operate and then keep transportation costs down, supply the market, and then have a good reclamation plan in place.
Right.
And so that's kind of what we've tried to focus on.
Okay, is that getting traction? I would just hope so, because it seems like a very appropriate approach where you can kind of, any mine is going to make noise, it's going to make dust, right? It's kind of the inevitable, but it's the necessary evil for the product that we all consume.
Yeah.
I mean, it affects everybody directly at the end of the day. We
We have had some success. So when we formed the coalition, we began in 2018, and really it was in response to one county that had basically prohibited sand and gravel operations in the county.
Oh, wow.
And so that was really the final straw that got this coalition formed, that said we're gonna be here to take on these issues. And so we went to the state legislature and said, hey, there's some funny business going on where they're trying to get rid of our industry, and that has regional impacts beyond just this city or just this county. That impacts the state budget. And so we did an analysis, and we looked at the time there was a highway rebuild project going on through that very point of the mountain area that we talked about, that the Department of Transportation dubbed the Tech Corridor. And that was about a $400 million Department of Transportation project. And so we just said, hey, you're extracting the resource from this location. This is the supply of your project. If we moved, hypothetically, to the next available location that provided the material that you need to meet your spec, that's permitted and a legal operation, where's the next one? So we went and found that, and we said, okay, what would the cost difference be? Just with the transportation, all else is the same. And so that project went from 400 million to 470 million. So it was a $70 million increase in transportation.
Wow, just moving material.
Yeah, and so that's how significant it is.
And that's taxpayers are paying for that.
Taxpayer
yeah,
dollars,
so that's
right?
like my money's going there. Yeah.
And so our point was the local decisions have a regional and statewide impact.
Yeah.
And so we were able to work with our legislators, and we found a brave soul. Actually, he came to us, a brave legislator who, not every legislator wants to stand up and fight for gravel pits.
Yeah.
But he was willing to do it. And we passed a bill. It was called HB, or House Bill 288. And it just provided, basically what it did is it prohibited a local government from changing their zoning or changing their ordinances in a way that restricts or limits or prohibits sand and gravel operations. And that for us was a huge lift.
Yes.
We got it passed in the last minutes of the legislative session. We had to get it recalled because originally it was voted down, and we got it recalled and voted yes. There was a lot of drama behind it, but ultimately it passed. And so for the last 5 or 6 years, that law has really provided some protection for the industry. And then since then, over the last 5 or 6 years, we've been working on more.
Good.
But that was sort of our first success.
That's good. That's really important though, because when you think of like the cost of living in Utah, just the property values have gone up in the last few decades.
Yeah.
And adding another cost on top of that because we can't get the resources that you need to build and to create those foundations. That just goes right back to the taxpayers you know, that directly affects us. Like,
25% of the cost of your house is tied up in the aggregate industry.
Yeah.
And so any increase in there, and you know, every state is doing all they can to find ways to reduce or make housing more affordable, reduce costs. And it's like, okay, well, we don't have control over all these commodities that are coming into the state. The one we do have control over is the aggregates.
Right.
And so let's do all we can to, the one thing we really do control, let's make sure that that's affordable. And the decisions we make there probably have a greater impact than all of these other ideas that states come up with of like, you know, we're going to do this program, housing program, or this housing program. And it's like, hey, if you ensure you have a healthy aggregate industry and costs can be low and competitive, that probably does more than a lot of the other programs.
That's a good point. Do you know what percentage of the cost is directly into the aggregate?
From what I remember and have heard, it's around 20%.
20%. 20% of like just your average building cost is in just raw material.
Yeah, when you consider, you know, your footings and foundations and your driveway and the utilities and the, you know, all the road base that's brought in for your lot.
It's a significant portion.
Significant.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a good approach of trying to keep that down. Really does benefit the consumer in the long run.
Yeah.
The consumer and the taxpayer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's a good point.
Sure. And it's a huge impact. So
yeah, that's interesting. Cool. Well, going back to the coalition, because I'd like to learn more about that. Who are the members that are a part of that group currently? Is that something you could speak of?
Yeah, sure. So we have a variety of members, and we're trying to build it up into a bigger coalition representing more of the industry.
Yeah.
Some of our local operators are here in Utah is Geneva Rock, Sunrock, WW Clyde, part of the Clyde group, Granite Construction, Kilgore, and their operations of Altaview and some other subsidiaries that they're operating. And then our newest member is, we're happy to have Burgess kind of joining us and
on the service provider side.
On the service side. So
no, we love supporting the industry in any way that we can because we see the value of it, and we want, I mean, like you were saying earlier, it's just so important to educate the public because it does directly affect them.
Yeah.
And so if they don't know about it, it's like, it's our job being in the industry to tell them about it and like, hey, this does affect you.
Yeah. And it's been great having somebody who was not specifically a mine operator, but more on the, what I call the intelligence side of mining to be part of our coalition and have that access to important information that we use as a coalition that educates decision makers.
Yes.
So, and that's really our focus, is just let's provide that information, let's provide education, let's guide that good policy decision.
Absolutely. Yeah, good. So you're not just smoking in cigars in the back room and just making bad policy. You're just
No, we're not. We've been very busy, and I talked about that House Bill 288. That was 6 years ago, and that was really what kicked it off. But since that time, we've had other legislative accomplishments. In Utah, you know, every state does this a little differently, but legislative sessions usually begin in the beginning of the year, and then they go for a period of time and end. Some states, they're kind of year-long. Some states, they go every other year. Utah is an annual. We meet, our legislature meets every year, but we only meet for 45 days.
okay.
And like when the clock strikes midnight on day 45, you're done. If your bill didn't get passed, it's over. So every state does things a little differently, but that's how we do it in Utah. And so for us, we're there every year, and we just have a short window of time to try and get our bill or our issue across the finish line. Our most recent one we did, you know, we had a bill this year we were working on as well that was quite significant, that was led by our coalition and others that operate in the industry that are not members of our coalition but are involved in the industry. And so it was kind of a cooperative approach.
Cool. That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Good. Good. Well, I think that's about all I have for you today. Is there any closing remarks? I guess I guess something that would be nice to touch base on is how can other members join the coalition? And do you need to be part of the mining industry? Are you guys looking for outside support or?
No, we are, our doors are open.
Okay.
We love people that are in the industry directly or indirectly. And we're trying to sort of change the coalition. We're looking at, it's such a long name.
Yes.
Critical Infrastructure Material Coalition. We're going to be doing a little bit of a name change just to make it easier to say.
Easier for branding, yes.
And, but we would love to have people that are in this industry or supply the industry or support the industry. If you care, if this impacts you, or if you want to just get involved and get to know people that are in this industry, we'd love to sit down and chat and have you participate. It really is like, we talked about this at the beginning, but I've been in this lobbying field for a long time, and I truly believe that our little coalition has been more effective at getting things done at the state and local level than most industry associations or coalitions up there. We have been very successful. We're not a coalition that's just hosting golf tournaments and social events.
We're a part of several of those associations. Yes,
we've kind of shed, or we never added those things.
Yeah,
we are really just focused on public policy.
Just get it done.
Like we sit down with our members, we talk about what is it the industry needs, what are the problems, how can we work with communities. We're working on this year. We're going to be talking permitting and the permitting process. We're going to be talking about governance and who governs mining in Utah. What's the process for getting a permit or a notice of intent, as we call it here. So what's the notice of intent process? Who oversees, who regulates air quality permitting processes? So we're really going to be doing a deep dive. And we have legislators on board who are saying we are running bills next year on this issue.
Wow.
Related to this industry.
Okay.
And so if you're in our industry, or if you're in sort of a neighboring industry, home building or development or whatever, those are all people we want to have join us and help support us and help us educate decision makers.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
Good. Very good. And how can they find you?
You can find us, again, you can go to our Critical Infrastructure Material website. You can reach out to me directly. My contact information, I have a site you can go to that's lobbyutah.com, and you can reach out to our members as well, right? So the members I've mentioned, and they're involved. So it's pretty easy to get a hold of us.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Good. And we'll be sure to include all of that information in the website, link description. So awesome. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, that's great. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. I learned a lot. That's great.